Welcome to this video tutorial on secondary data review. In this lesson, we will discuss Deep, an online platform that aids doing secondary data review. We'll show you how to use this platform and go through all its features step by step. In order to access the platform, go to the deep.io in your Google Chrome browser. Currently, Deep is only supported by Google Chrome. Alternatively, you can also type the deep.io into Google. It should be your first search result. To access the platform, click here. You need a profile to log on to Deep. If you do not have such profile, you can register here. Fill out your name, last name, organization, and email, and fill out the CAPTCHA. Once you click register, you will receive an email with a link to set your password. Once you set your password, you can access the platform by filling out your credentials. This is the homepage of Deep. Over here, you will find projects that you are a part of. If you are new to Deep, you do not have any projects yet. On the right-hand side, you will find a content panel. Here, you can see your user profile. In your user profile, you can change your name, last name, organization you work for, and you have several language options. You will see that there are several ways to collaborate on Deep. On my content panel, when I click on projects, I can see the users that are in my projects. In this project, these are the users. I can add people to this project by looking for users. These could be users from my own organization, but I can also add people from different organizations. To add a user, I search and type for their name. Once I click on the plus, I can add a user to my project. Here is where I can set roles for different users. For example, I can make a user an admin, meaning that they have a lot of rights, or I can make them a mere viewer, meaning that they can only see what I do on my project. A different way to collaborate is to not just create my own project, but also look at other projects that already exist. If I click here on Discover, then I see a list of other projects that already exist in Deep here. I can search these projects. For example, if I wanted to do a secondary data review in Deep on Nigeria, I see a project already exists. I could ask to join this project by clicking here, or at a minimum, I can contact the administrator to see how we could collaborate. When you ask to join a project, please use your professional email address. It is also helpful that you specify why you want to collaborate, as well as what you will contribute to the project. In your content panel, you will find projects. Once you click on it, you will come to the projects page, where you see all the projects that you are a part of. If you want to create a new project, you can discover projects that already exist here. You can also create your new project by clicking Add. Once you've filled out a name for your project, you have to fill out some general details about your project, when you started, when you ended. If you do not know the end date, you can leave it blank. You can also add a project description. You can add users to your project here. As discussed, you can add users from your own organization or from different organizations, as long as they have a profile on Deep. Up next, you need to add a geographical scope to your project. This means you need to add the country for which you want to do secondary data review. Click on Add and use an existing region. Here you can type the name or search for the name for the country that you want to add. You can add one country, but you can also add multiple countries in case you're doing a regional monitoring. As you can see here, the country will appear. The shapefiles have already been downloaded into Deep. You will see several geographical locations. You have the overall country, but you'll also have different admin levels, including the province, and in this case, the district. This is similar for all countries. You will find governorates, provinces, etc. Now, you need to add your analysis framework to your project in DEEP. Your analysis framework is vital to all stages of your research. For secondary data review, we use the analysis framework to check your secondary data against. It is mandatory to upload an analysis framework onto DEEP. Without it, you will not be able to use DEEP. Here, you can see many frameworks that have already been created in DEEP. The IFRC Master Framework is one of them. In order to use this framework, you click on it and click Use. This way, you will use this framework. Any changes that will be made to this framework will also be reflected in your project. You can also click on this framework and click Clone. Then, you need to fill out a title and description and clone the framework. This means you can use this framework but make minor alterations should that be necessary. Next to using an existing framework, you can also add a framework into DEEP. In order to do so, you click on Add, fill out a title and description, and add a new framework. This will be the overview where you will find your analysis framework once you are done building it. In order to build your framework, you click here on the Edit Details and Edit Widgets. When you go to the Widgets page, you can start creating widgets to create your framework. For example, you can drag and drop widgets by clicking on the plus here. Then you can move them around to create your framework. You could, for example, use the Date widget in order to specify the date of a piece of information. Or you can do geolocation to specify the location where this piece of information was tagged. You have two parts of this framework. This will become the yellow, orange, and blue as you saw in the IFRC framework. You also have the list, where you can specify further tags for your framework. Once you're done, you click Save, and then you can use the framework. Once you have created your project in DEEP, or are a member of a project, you can start doing your secondary data review. As you may recall from previous lessons, the first step to secondary data review is to collate your sources. In DEEP, we call these sources leads. DEEP simultaneously functions as your database, meaning all your sources can be stored in DEEP. There are several ways to make sure that you store your leads into your DEEP database. You can either upload sources from online, such as ReliefWeb or Unitarian Response, or you can also add sources from your local disk or from any other cloud-based service. We will go through both options. If you want to upload a source from your disk or from a cloud-based service, click on Add Leads. You will see here the options you have to upload sources from, such as your Google Drive, Dropbox, or your local computer drive. In order to add a source, click here and search for the source that you want to upload. Once you upload a source, make sure the details are correct, that you have assigned it to the right project, that the title and the date of the source is correct. If you want to save the source, you can click Save here. You can also upload multiple sources at the same time. In order to do so, go to your local disk and make sure that you select all the sources you want to upload at once. You can also upload sources directly from websites. In order to do so, however, you first need to have a browser extension that can connect the website to DEEP. You can install this browser extension by going to your profile on the right and click on Browser Extension. Here, you will find the extension that you need to add to Chrome. You will find that this has been successful when you see that symbol here. Now that I have my browser extension, I can start searching for secondary data online. For example, if I want to go to ReliefWeb and search for the project I'm interested in, I can find all kinds of updates. Once I see a source that I am interested in and want to keep into my database, I click on it and go to my browser extension. You can see that most of the information of the source will be automatically filled out. Make sure that you check whether all the information is correct. Once I have verified that this is the correct information, I submit it to Deep. Now, when I go back to my database and reload, I will see that all my sources that I have online will start appearing in my Deep database. This is how I collate all my sources. Now that I have collected all my leads into my database, I now need to check what the information is that I need to keep from my sources. This is the process of tagging your secondary data against your analysis framework. In Deep, this process is turning your leads into entries. In order to start tagging, I go to my source and I click on the right arrow here, Add Entry from this lead. This is the part where you start tagging your secondary data against your analysis framework. On the left-hand side, you see the source. On the right-hand side, you see your analytical framework. This is the IFRC analysis framework that we discussed that was already created in Deep. You have the context, then the actual event or shock, the Unitarian profile, etc. It goes into the analytical pillars of scope and scale, Unitarian conditions, and capacities and response. There are slight differences between this analysis framework and the one that we discussed. The framework in Deep is different because of the tagging system. In the Unitarian condition pillar, you will have 6 subpillars instead of 3. The living standards means the impact on the availability, accessibility, awareness, quality, and use of goods and services. The physical and mental well-being stays the same. The third pillar, which was vulnerabilities, specific needs, coping mechanisms, self-recovery, and risk, has been split into multiple pillars. The capacity and response pillar is also slightly different. Instead of 3 subpillars, you now have 6. The RCRC movement is the National Society capacity. Government and local authorities has been split from national actors capacity. International actors capacity and response remains the same. Response gaps means that you can see a clear gap in response. System functionality is about functioning networks, infrastructure, or services that you need to respond. As we said, your source is on the left-hand side. You can display your source in several ways. You can look at the original, meaning the way you could see the source as it was from the online website, which will display with pictures and everything. You can also use the simplified version, meaning only the text has been left. This is done to aid tagging. For example, what I want to know here is the Unitarian needs that are in Turkey. There are 1,704 new cases of coronavirus. This is information I want to keep because it's going to tell me something about the situation in Turkey. So I drag and drop the text to here. There are also other ways that I can ensure the text here appears here, for example by copy-pasting. Now that I have this little excerpt, I want to tag it according to my analysis framework. It says there is 1,704 new cases of coronavirus. To me, this is a Unitarian condition, physical and mental well-being, under health, because people are actually physically getting sick. There are, of course, multiple tags possible for one piece of text, so make sure that you tag all possible options. In addition, of course, I can have more information in this text that I want to keep and tag. This is just the same process. Select the text, drag and drop, and start tagging. Other than pieces of text, I can also tag any picture, infographic, or graph that I want to keep. In order to do so, I am in my original and click on the little camera here. I take a screenshot of what I want to keep, click here, and it will appear here. I can now also tag according to my analytical framework. Tagging against my analysis framework is what we call the first level of tagging. However, there are several other things that I need to tag, such as geographic location, but also further steps I need to do in secondary data review, such as judging my source reliability. In order to do so, I go to List. Here I will find the excerpt that I tagged. Now I need to judge the source reliability. In this case, it is an online newspaper that I judge as usually reliable. There is not much information about the severity of this piece of information in the text, so I'm leaving it blank in this case. There are no specific demographic groups mentioned in this piece of text, so I don't have to tag them right now. The same for specific needs groups, but just know that these options are available. We recommend to always tag at least one affected group. In this case, the piece of text does not specify whether the cases are among displaced populations or, for example, the host community. It applies to everyone in Turkey basically, but in this case it's only talking about sick people, so these are affected. The location is also not necessarily specified. I know it's 1700 cases in Turkey, so I click the whole country. However, there's also of course pieces of information that are specific to one province or even to one district, so you can tag as precisely as you can. When I have multiple entries listed here from the same source, I don't have to always tag everything individually. There are buttons here next to these boxes that could make me apply this to all entries below. That way I don't have to tag everything individually. Once I'm done, I save. Now, in my entries list, I can see all the information that I've tagged. What I would now like to do is export my entries. I go to Export, and here I will find all the leads that are in my database for this project. I could specify to search only for specific leads that I want to export. For example, leads from a specific date. I can also search for specific entries that I want to export. For example, entries that only apply to a specific geographic location. What I could also do is to only look for one sector. For example, if I only want to have a report on WASH. The last thing I can do is change the way my report looks. I have several options for exporting my data: Word, PDF, Excel, or JSON file. If I keep all sectors, I could still already change my reporting structure. For example, maybe I want WASH to be more at the forefront of my report and the other sectors to follow. Once I have finished my reporting structure and the specific information that I want to look for, I will start exporting by clicking here. Now I can view all exports and see all the reports that I've generated. This one is still loading. Once it's done, I will find the download button and I can see all the data in my report as it has been generated. Now I have all my data exported into a reporting template. This is similar as we discussed how your analysis framework can turn into your reporting structure. This type of report can help me summarize and compare information already. All I need to do is rewrite, but the sources are already tagged. In addition, I can start using this information in order to do further analysis, the other steps of the spectrum that we discussed. The last feature that we want to show you in Deep is the assessment registry. This is the assessment registry. We use an assessment registry for several purposes: to keep track of the assessment landscape in a crisis, to see what assessments have been done, where they have been done, what has been assessed, etc. This way, we do not duplicate assessments and we can better understand what is missing, or what methodology would best complement existing information. We can also easily pull out what assessments are available for which geographic areas, sectors, etc. In order to upload an assessment, I first have to upload a lead, the same process as we discussed previously. Here I am again in my leads database. Assuming this is an assessment report, rather than tagging an entry, I click on this arrow, which is adding an assessment from the lead. Then this lead will appear in my assessment registry. Next to uploading existing assessment reports, I can also keep track of what assessments are planned in order to better coordinate. In order to do so, I click on Planned Assessments and click on Add Planned Assessment. Here, I fill out the title of the assessment, the country, tag the geographical location, and specify who's holding the assessment and for what sector, as well as who they are aiming to assess. This way, I can keep better track of all the assessments in my information landscape and also advise partners who want to undertake assessments on what is happening. First, I have to fill out metadata. I have to specify the country this assessment was in. If I have a project where I only follow one country, this is of course pretty straightforward. But if I do regional monitoring, I have to specify the country this assessment was in. I can specify the type of crisis and the date the crisis started if I know. Preparedness means whether this assessment was done with already existing tools and protocols. For example, national governments will often have tools and protocols for doing an assessment in case a natural disaster hits. In this case, this assessment was done without such prepared tools or protocols. I can also specify whether external support was given. For example, if an organization such as JIPS has assisted in doing this assessment. Then I specify whether this assessment was coordinated. There are generally three types of coordination that we distinguish. Uncoordinated, which is when an agency solely undertakes the assessment. Joint or coordinated, when there's multiple organizations that have done the assessment. Or harmonized, for example, if the food security sector does an assessment and in its report also incorporates the results of a different WASH assessment. I can specify more details for my assessment, for example, whether it was rapid, or a type of monitoring, or a registration, or other type of assessment. I can also specify whether it was done once or whether it's done multiple times, the confidentiality, in this case unprotected as I found it online, the language, the number of pages, the dates of the assessment, and who carried it out or whether it was funded by a specific donor. Next, I can click on Add Additional Documents. For example, this is only the assessment report, but sometimes I can find the primary data such as an Excel file and I can upload it here, or the questionnaire bank that I can upload here, or the executive summary that can oftentimes be a separate document. In Focus, I need to specify what my assessment is actually focused on. For example, what type of pillar in my analytical framework is this looking at? In addition, I also look at the sectors this assessment is focused on. This is quite important as in your assessment registry, you will later find all the assessments that, for example, pertain to food. Then you will know where a food assessment has been taken place, what type of methodology they used, and which geographic area. And you also know how to not duplicate assessments in the same location. The affected group means to specify whether this assessment was done for example, refugees, IDPs, etc. In the location, you geotag as precisely as possible the specific location where this assessment took place. Another important section of the assessment registry is the methodology. Here, you can type text to tell a story about the methodology used. Oftentimes, an assessment report will have a specific methodology section from which you can extract the information, so you could drag and drop. At a minimum, you should fill out here the data collection technique, for example, whether they are interviews or focus group discussions or household interviews. In addition, it is helpful if the assessment has specified the sampling size. Also, the proximity of the enumerator to the assessed person, the unit of analysis, and the unit of reporting can be specified here. This will help later on in identifying methodologies used for assessments and seeing where you can complement information. Another thing that you can do in this assessment registry is to provide a summary of the assessment results. Here you find the sectors that you specified earlier in your focus. You can provide a summary as to what are the main sectoral outcomes, the underlying factors, priority affected groups, etc. This way, you can better summarize your information and also see whether the results of the assessment are useful and telling you something about the humanitarian conditions. You can do this for all sectors that you specified previously. The last thing you can do in this registry is to score your assessments. What we mean by this is to score the quality of an assessment. We do this because, let's say in a geographical area, there are 5 assessments on food that have already been undertaken. However, if all these assessments were quite low quality, this means that we still not have enough information to make a useful decision on the food security situation in that geographic location. We score assessments on fit for purpose, trustworthiness, analytical rigor, analytical writing, and per sector we score the analytical density. For example, fit for purpose contains relevance. This means whether the result answers the original research question or objective, and that it brings new or additional information and fills previous information gaps. I score this on a scale of 1 to 5. For trustworthiness, I could look at source reliability, for example, whether the authors of the report are reliable. I can also see whether it was plausible, which means that the results are plausible or logical in context. I keep scoring for every aspect, and in the end it will give me a final score. Once I have filled out all my sections of the assessment registry, I am done and I click on Save. The last thing I want to do is to export my assessment registry. Typically, you export your registry in Excel. I click on Start Assessment Export, go again to View All Exports, and I find that an assessment export is being generated. If I click on Download, I will get the export in Excel. Here, I will find all the information as to how I tagged my assessments, with everything that I need in order to obtain a picture of my assessment landscape.
Course conclusion. This concludes the video tutorials on secondary data review by the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies and Data Friendly Space. From these videos, we hope that you take away needs assessment is a vital process undertaken to identify humanitarian needs to inform decision makers, enabling program planning and implementation. Needs analysis is a crucial part of this process and consists of different steps, some of which are done individually, others jointly. An analysis framework is a good tool for structuring the data and will help us move from descriptive to anticipatory analysis. Secondary data review is a crucial step to take before, during and throughout the assessment cycle. One way to do secondary data review is to use the DEEP platform. You can tie secondary data review as well as the steps of analysis to different analytical outputs. The aim is to go beyond dashboards and provide outputs that will inform decision makers. Remember, it is all about answering what has happened, what is happening now, what is important and why, what don't we know, what might happen next. Good luck.